Golden Jubilee Celebration Evening Talk Series. Um, I now request Mr. Mukesh Jain, our chapter president, to give his welcome address. Welcome the audience.
A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I, on behalf of Management Committee of ISTD Delhi chapter, welcome you all to this Golden Jubilee Year evening lecture on a very relevant topic, management lessons from ancient Indian wisdom and approach to a more sustainable paradigm. Friends, how India can really contribute towards making the existing modern management paradigms more sustainable even at the midst of business uncertainty. The answer to this above question broadly lies in the Indian ethos. Indian ethos has a very rich and old tradition which is more than 3,500 years old as against the modern management principles which are at a much more infant stage. Much of these ethos is derived from the ancient Indian scriptures like the Vedas, Upanishads, Ramayana, Bhagavad Gita, Manu Smriti, and Arthashastra, etc., etc. The ancient Indian ethos, which has stood the test of time, can help modern management principles to create a more sustainable model of management. With these words, I welcome you all once again, all my seniors, colleagues, and students to this webinar. I wish you all a very happy and fruitful evening, please. Namaskar. Over
Very
to
much.
Madam Pretma ji.
Thank you, Mr. Jain. So, friends, in the last decade or so, the management world has realized that CEOs need to follow not only the business compass, but also a moral compass to assure the organization they lead. Improving one's spiritual quotient is now a sheer business necessity and shall be more so in the coming years. Stephen Covey, in his book, The Eighth Habit, talks about the inner voice. And what is this inner voice? He says that as professionals, we must pay heed to our inner voice. While proposing the whole person's paradigm, he speaks of the four dimensions of a person, which is the spirit, the body, the heart, and the mind. He says the one who listens to the voice of the conscience often excels in strategizing and leadership skills. Our ancient scriptures like Bhagavad Gita, written thousands of years ago, enlightens us on all managerial techniques, leading us towards a harmonious state in place of conflict, tension, poor productivity, absence of motivation, which is so very common today. The Ramayana contains lessons on strategic management, statecraft, good governance, and value-based leadership. The focus is on righteousness or dharma. That is the rightful conduct, which should be the bulwark of all leadership actions. So friends, we have with us our esteemed speaker, Mr. D.V. Shastri, who will be sharing with us his unique insights into management theory and practice through the lens of Indian scriptures. So before I invite him, I would like to very briefly introduce him. Mr. D.V. Shastri is Executive Director in GAIL, a Maharatna PSU. He heads GAIL's three verticals: training, R&D, and startup. Mr. Shastri is an MTech from IIT Bombay and has a PG diploma in management. Apart from performing the key roles in various areas of HR and HRD, his major contributions has been in bringing transformational changes, particularly in the area of talent acquisition, performance management, training and leadership development, mentoring, OD, and establishing a strong industrial academic interface. It is under his leadership that GAIL's Corporate Training Institute, that is the GTI, has been transformed as a world-class center of excellence in natural gas sector. He's a recipient of many national and international awards, and Mr. Shastri has a deep interest in spirituality, ancient Indian literature, scriptures, music, and yoga. He's also a writer having several publications to his credit. With this brief introduction, I now invite Mr. Shastri to address our audience. Over to you, Mr. Shastri.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Am I audible clearly?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, a very good evening and namaskar to all of you, respected senior members of ISTD and dear fellow ISTDians. A very pleasant and good evening to all of you. Following the recent elections and consequent formation of the new managing committee of ISTD Delhi chapter, this is the first occasion when all of us are meeting on this platform. I again extend a very warm welcome to all of you. So it will be befitting for all of us to begin with a prayer from Rig Veda, which says, Sangachadvam Samvadadvam Samvo Manansi Janatam, which means may we march forward with a common goal, may we be open-minded and work together in harmony. Second part of the Richa says, Samani va akutihi samana hridayani va samanamastu vo mano yatha va susahatati. This means that may our aspirations be harmonious, may our minds be in unison, may we strive to reduce disparity, may we be bound in strong fellowship and unity. So it is with this spirit that it will be our endeavor to take the activities of ISTD Delhi chapter forward and to continuously strive for achieving excellence in whatever we do. All of us know today nobody is unfamiliar with the word VUCA, the term VUCA, and it is truly manifested in the form of COVID-19 very recently. So that is more than enough to understand the nature of uncertainties, complexity, and so on. So during the past few decades, 1 or 2 decades, we have observed many companies in the West filing bankruptcy, laying off people, rising debt, many corrupt practices among business coming to light, etc. And some of the companies which were the icons of best practices within their industry miserably failed. The failure of giants like Lehman Brothers, AIG, Bank of America, etc. has been raising serious doubts about the sustainability of the management practices in these institutions. Moreover, the ongoing struggle and appearance of more big names in the list of this struggle is further raising the doubts about the sustainability of the management principles and practices, much of which has been influenced by Adam Smith and Taylor, and more recently by Peter Drucker, all of us know. But on the contrary, we have seen a more resilient India, which is not just continuing the growth story of Indian economy, but is also able to better cope up with the global financial crisis. Also, India has become a dream destination for doing business as against their Western counterparts. So, how India can really contribute towards making the existing modern management paradigms more sustainable, even at the midst of business uncertainty? So the answer to the above question broadly lies in the Indian ethos, which has a very rich and old tradition compared to the modern principles, which are recent developments. Much of our Indian ethos is derived from the ancient Indian scriptures like the Vedas, Upanishads, Ramayana, both Ramayana, that is Valmiki Ramayana and Ramcharitmanas, both are a great source of management insights. The Bhagavad Gita, Manusmriti, the Chanakya Niti, and so on and so forth. So the Indian ancient ethos, which has stood the test of the time, can really help modern management principles to create a more sustainable model of management. In this context, it is important for us to revisit the principles of management laid down by Peter Drucker, because much of the modern management has been influenced by his writings. Some of the basic principles which Drucker has put forth. The first thing he says is management is about human beings and its task is to make people capable of joint performance and also to consolidate their strengths and to do away with the weaknesses. Similarly, he talks of organizational culture, he talks of common goals and shared values. And in our context, he has said very one good thing, that every enterprise is a learning and a teaching institution. Training and development must be built into the organization at all levels. And obviously, training and development are never stopping. They are always continuing. Next thing he talks about performance and communication, individual responsibility, and so on and so forth. But one of the things which he says that we must remember about any enterprise is that the results exist only on the outside. The result of a business is a satisfied customer. This is where some revisit or relook is required. Certainly, management has drawn a lot through the interdisciplinary researches from various fields of social and natural sciences, but ethics still remains low in the priority list. The result is apparent. In spite of many organizations coming up with innovative business models and creating best practices, we have witnessed corporate scams, bankruptcy, etc., still haunting the business world. The fundamental reason for such failures has been the failure in creating sustainable business practices, because they lack morality or fail to make any ethical considerations while making any business transaction. And most of the decisions are based on profit alone. But on the contrary, as we know, our Indian culture and tradition is having the inbuilt element of sustainability. Whenever we undertake any religious rituals, the Pandit starts with the Shanti part. He says, Devhu Shanti Rantarikshagum Shanti, Prithvi Shanti Rapas Shanti, Shanti Roshadaya Shanti, Shanti Sarvagum Shanti, Shanti Reva Shanti, Sama Shanti Redhi. That means this is a beautiful, explanation and summation of harmony with nature. That is Devhu Shanti. That means let there be peace in the space. Antariksh Shanti Prithvi, let there be peace on earth, the herbs and the air and water and whatnot. So our culture speaks of holistic approach rather than piecemeal approach or addressing a particular aspect like profit alone. So that is the fundamental difference. Peter Drucker said, it is not enough to do well, it must also do good. That is one good thing which matches with the Indian philosophy. And he says, but in order to do good, a business must first do well. Yes, that is nothing objectionable. And he also adds that whenever an institution malfunctions as consistently as boards of directors have in nearly every major fiasco of the last 40 or 50 years, it is futile to blame a man. It is the institution which malfunctions. So that means we must focus on institutions, not individuals alone. But it also remains a fact that institutions are consisting of a group of persons only. So again, holistic approach is required in order to address the whole paradigm. So we can conclude that when an organization or institution fails, something is wrong with the management paradigm of that institution.
like to show your slides? You want to
Yes,
share your
yes,
yeah?
yes, I
So
will.
you can
Yes.
keep flipping.
So
Yeah. So
don't
you
let
can keep
anybody,
flipping your slides.
don't let anybody stop it. I have slides, but I will show at appropriate time. So
Okay,
let it
okay.
remain with me.
Okay.
Okay. So we were discussing about Peter Drucker's propositions and the contextual requirement of revisiting those fundamental propositions put forth by him so as to have a sustainable management practices. So now let us take one or two aspects, because I know we have to keep the discipline of time also. We can't stretch the session too much. The topic is so deep and vast that it can take hours together, but we have to somehow manage ourselves. Some people talk of time management. I say it is not time management. Time is time. We have to manage ourselves. So that is what I would try to do. So the practice of management exists broadly in 4 levels, which can be depicted in the form of an inverted pyramid. This is the slide which I wanted to show. You can see it on your screen. So this inverted pyramid is shown here on the slide. It starts from managing the self. Managing yourself through moral values and ethical principles is of utmost importance. Only when we practice morality and ethics and manage our desires and senses, then we set examples for others to follow. This is the essence of leadership. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also tells Arjuna, Yadyadacharati shreshthas tatta deveta rojanaha sayat pramanam kurute lokas tadanu vartate. That means whatever conduct is demonstrated by the leader, the masses follow the same. And whatever propositions he makes, those are accepted by the masses or the team members and they follow it. So that means if the conduct of the leader is good, the team will also be good and vice versa. So it is through leadership we are able to connect well with the broader society as we start sharing a common goal and purpose, which is constantly striving for betterment of the society. Better societal relations foster a sense of trust in the relationship. And after a trust is established, it is the moral duty and responsibility of an organization to maintain that trust through properly managing various relationships. Then we move towards addressing the triple bottom line, that is people, planet, and profit. People in the form of suppliers, distributors, bankers, employees, agents, etc. They constitute our living stakeholders. Planet constitutes the natural resources and larger environment. The non-living or abiotic component of our stakeholders domain. The living and non-living stakeholders are interrelated to each other through our organizational systems and processes. Hence, we use the term business ecosystem. So at this level, to indicate the web of interrelationships. And finally, we go to the level of global management, which is facilitated by the promotion of free trade, both on a transnational and transcontinental basis. As we all know, rapid globalization and intermixing of cultures is leading to the creation of a common global culture where people of various countries are exhibiting certain common cultural traits, leading to the formation of a uniform world order with every person being a citizen of this new world order. And that's why today we often use the term global citizen. This movement from the level of self-management to creation of a uniform world order is through creation, exchange, and transfer of knowledge at various levels. It is the knowledge which is instrumental in relating the individual to the larger society or the universal order. This is really in tune with the Vedanta school of thought, where the ultimate aim of any person is to connect with his Atman, individual self, with the Brahman, the universal self. And it is through knowledge, that is jnana, that individual attains the universal self. So the model appearing again on the right hand side of the screen clearly depicts a six-fold path towards attaining this goal of connecting to self through knowledge or jnana. You can see it starts with knowledge creation, that is jnana srishti, knowledge acquisition, that is jnana prapti, knowledge transfer, that is jnana parivahan, knowledge sharing, that is jnana sahabhajan, open innovation, that is mukt navakaran, and spiritual congruence, that is adhyatmik samanjasya. So this is the model which is very relevant not only in the context of management of various enterprises, but it is more relevant to us in the context of Indian Society for Training and Development. So we must deep dive into it and try to get some insights to make ourselves more developed, rather for self-development, I should say. So now let us also dwell upon the Karma Yoga and Vedanta for managing self and management by objectives proposed by the Western thinkers. According to Peter Drucker, modern management is primarily based on knowledge workers. Knowledge workers face drastically new demands. They have to ask, who am I? What are my strengths? How do I work? They have to ask, where do I belong? They have to ask, what is my contribution? They have to take responsibility and so on. These are the questions. In this way, they should first understand themselves and try to identify their strengths. The strengths should then transform into their core competencies, which will help them in executing their tasks more productively and contribute towards overall organizational development. Whether it is Steve Jobs of Apple Computers or Dhirubhai Ambani of Reliance Industries, every successful business leader knew this secret to success, that is managing self. However, this tenet of managing self is not new. It dates back to the Vedanta periods. In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, it is said, Atmai Vedam Agra Asit, etc., etc. I will not narrate the whole shloka, but I will tell you the meaning of it. It says that in the beginning, this world was only self in the form of a person or individual. When he looked around himself, he saw nothing else than the self. So he said, I am. Therefore arose the name I. Even to this day, when one is addressed, he says, this is I, and then speaks whatever other name he may have. Further, the concept of self was well elaborated in the Karma Yoga of Bhagavad Gita, where the Lord Krishna said, Indriyani paranyaho indrirebhyah param manah manasastu para buddhir buddhehe parasastu saha. That means that the senses are said to be superior to the body, the mind is superior to the senses, and intellect is superior to the mind, and that which is superior to the intellect is he, that is self or Atman. So intellect and knowledge is what really differentiates us from animals and savages. All living beings, whether it is humans or animals, have five senses of vision, taste, smell, hearing, and touch. If our senses control us instead of the intellect, then we will be no different from the animals. People who never realize their self, they are controlled by their senses instead of their mind or intellect, and hence they take decisions based on temptations and invariably make mistakes, which leads to the scams or ghotalas. So to really understand self, managers need to cultivate their thoughts. They need to constantly seek knowledge to make more informed decisions. All this happens through knowledge creation, that is Jnana Srishti, and knowledge acquisition, that is Jnana Prapti. In the Bhagavad Gita, while interacting with Arjuna, Krishna said about the importance of knowledge. He says, Nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitra mihe vidyate. That means, O Arjuna, there is nothing purer on this earth compared to knowledge. And then when Arjuna asked him how to acquire it and who can acquire it, then he says, Shraddhavan labate jnanam tat paras sanyatendriya and tad vidya pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. So Krishna tells Arjuna that if you want to truly acquire the knowledge, one has to be polite. The knowledge can be acquired through humility, and only then you can get the real knowledge and get the liberation. So there are many things that people learn spontaneously. For example, when a human baby is born, he or she cries. No one taught him or her how to cry, but he or she knows it. They also know how to smile, how to throw their legs here and there, and so on. Similarly, there are certain actions which we do on the basis of ideas which come to our mind spontaneously. This is the essence of knowledge creation. But knowledge is not always created by itself. Sometimes you acquire knowledge from others. But ultimately, when you create and acquire knowledge and have a deep understanding of it from your experiences, then that synthesizes in the form of your intellect. The more you cultivate your mind and intellect, the more you realize yourself or Atman. The more you realize yourself, the better you can connect with your broader self, which in the context of management is your organization and its vision and mission. To quote Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple Computers, he says, I quote, your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary. Unquote. So the inner voice, which Steve Jobs talks about, is the Atman or self, and the heart or intuition symbolizes the Brahman, the universal self or God consciousness. So when we follow our heart and intuition and listen to our inner voice, we actually link our Atman with the Brahman and hence can unleash the infinite power to succeed. No doubt, Steve Jobs' above quote is in tune with the Advaita philosophy of Aham Brahmasmi, which means I am the Brahman or God. So to really manage ourselves and connect with our Atman, we need to first gain complete control over our senses. For that, we need to completely detach ourselves from all material temptations through self-abnegation. Vedanta says, do not lose the treasure of yourself for the pleasure of senses. In this context, I would like to quote Bhartrihari, again, who was a great king, later on turned into a sage. He has written 3 Shatakas, that is the 3 booklets of 100 couplets each, called Niti Shatak, Vairagya Shatak, and Shangar Shatak. So in that, he has given a very beautiful shloka. He said, Nindantu yadiva stuvantu va, Lakshmi he agatu va gacchatu va, Adyaiva maranam va yugantare va, Nyayat patha pravachalanti padamna dhiraha. That means पैसा आए या जाए या कोई मेरी निंदा करे या स्तुति करे, कुछ भी हो, आज मरना है तो आज मरे या एक युग के बाद मरे, लेकिन न्याय के पथ से जो अच्छे लोग हैं, जो सज्जन लोग हैं, वो विचलित नहीं होते हैं. This is what has been narrated by Bhartrihari in his Niti Shatak. So this should be the ideal behavior of the leaders who are running various enterprises. Finally, every person has his own dream and personal goals. Sometimes they try to undermine the broader organizational goals in front of their personal goals. It is this conflict of interest which is a prerequisite for most of the failures in management in any organization. So to remove such conflicts, modern management advocates the concept of management by objectives, that is MBO, with which we are all familiar. However, his concept of MBO is misunderstood in practice as managers tend to take a myopic view of the word objective, where it only covers the achievement on individual level instead of achieving the broader organizational goals. So to really make MBO instrumental in any organization, it is important that managers understand their karma in its entirety. The concept of karma comes from the Karma Yoga of the Bhagavad Gita, in which the Lord Krishna says to Arjun, Karmanye vadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. The meaning of this is known to all, so I will not narrate it. But Lord Krishna further says, Durena yavaram karma buddhi yoga dhananjaya buddhau sharanam aviccha kripancha phala hetava. This means that we shouldn't work for the results, but rather work with an ideal buddhi yoga or a vision, because if we work for result, then our work will culminate once we achieve the result. However, when we work with an ideal or vision and keep it so high, we keep on striving to reach it, so that in the process of delivering our karma, we grow. Hence, work for results is far inferior to work with an ideal or a vision. So in the context of modern management, it means that every manager should be focused on his work and at the same time be in sync with the organization's vision and mission. When every worker and manager is in sync with the organization's vision and mission, then it ultimately leads to excellence. This is the true essence of MBO preached by Drucker. So it is the creation of knowledge on an individual level and acquiring knowledge through work within an enterprise that a manager gradually aligns his individual goals with the broader mission and vision of the enterprise. And that really is instrumental in achieving the goal of MBO as managing self. It is through Jnana Srishti and Jnana Prapti that the individual achieves the motive of attaching his Atman to Brahman in an organizational framework. Now let us also talk something about the importance of ethical leadership in fostering trust. Managers have to face a dynamic business environment where change is the only constant, and they have to keep adapting to these changes. But sometimes, in the situations of complexity or uncertainty, managers may get lost. It is then that someone has to show them the right direction. As Stephen Covey said, management is efficiency in climbing the ladder of success. Leadership determines whether the ladder is leaning against the right wall. This was said by Stephen Covey in 1989. Ancient Indian wisdom and scriptures like Bhagavad Gita and Ramayana, ancient sages like Yagyavalkya or Buddha, and writings of scholars like Kautilya, that is Chanakya, can teach a lot on ethical and responsible leadership. These can be incorporated in the existing models to create more sustainable, ethical, and responsible leadership models. Having said this, the qualities of a leader must possess was well said, laid down by Chanakya, the revered scholar in political science, who gave this world the first management text in the form of Arthashastra, which was written around 4th century BC. Also, it is worth exploring the beautiful, powerful sutras put forth by him, which are quite relevant in the context of management of the organization as well as the self. I will quote only a few sutras, although there are many, but in today's context, let us ask ourselves, all of us are human beings. Who does not want happiness? Can anybody say? Can I hear, or all are muted? But I presume that everybody wants happiness. No one would say that I want to be unhappy. So from that fundamental premise, Chanakya brought his first sutra. He said, Sukhasya Moolam Dharma. All of us want Sukha or happiness in life. So Sukhasya Moolam Dharma. So if we want happiness, what is the foundation of Sukha? It is Dharma. And Dharma is the duty or the righteous path which is to be taken by one. We should not confuse it with the narrow definition of some groupism or some small cults like मैं Muslim हूँ, वो Hindu है, वो Sikh है. No, dharma is the duty which is to be performed by an individual and the righteous path which is to be followed for performing the duty. So then next question in the series is Chandragupta asked him, Dharmasya Moolam Kim? So he says, Dharmasya Moolam Artha. That means if you have to perform your duty well, you have to have resources. Artha in the narrow sense is money. We say Artha Shastra, economics. But Artha means resources. And resources include all kinds of resources. That is human resources, materials, money, everything. So Dharmasya Moolam Artha. And what is the Moolam of Artha? Arthasya Moolam Rajyam. And Rajyam means enterprise. Rajyam does not mean the kingdom in the narrow sense. It is the enterprise through which we create value, and that value is created through resources of all kind. So Dharmasya Moolam Artha, Arthasya Moolam Rajyam, Rajya Moolam Indriya Jaya. So what is the foundation of a good enterprise? He says, Rajya Moolam Indriya Jaya. That means one has to conquer his senses if he or she is in the control of enterprise. So Chanakya also emphasizes the importance of ethical conduct, and this postulate or the sutra is quite relevant in the context of principles of business ethics and corporate governance. Then Rajya Moolam Indriya Jaya, then he says so many other things. Indriya Jayasya Moolam Vinaya, Vinayasya Moolam Vriddhopaseva, Vriddhopasevaya Vijnanam, Vijnanena Atmanam Sampadayet, and so on and so forth. We will not go into all those details, but in the present context, this much is enough for us to understand the importance of all these things. That is, Artha, resources, and the enterprise, and how to carry out the governance of enterprise. So the successful and reputed organizations with revered corporate leaders can follow this wisdom of Chanakya. And Chanakya also uses one term. He says it is the Rajarshi paradigm, which clearly advocates a leadership which is both responsible and ethical. Modern leadership can integrate with this Rajarshi paradigm in the following ways. For example, Jnana Parivahan through continuous learning and development for various members of the organization, mentorship for the newly inducted management trainees. Again, the concept of mentorship is not new. It is as old as the Ram and Vasisht, or Krishna and Sandipani, or Krishna or Arjun. In fact, all of us have a mentor in our life. Many are aware, many are not, but we have to accept that each one of us has a mentor. In our life, certain situations come when we are perplexed, जिसको हिंदी में कहते हैं किंग कर्तव्य विमूढ़ होना. मौके आते हैं जिंदगी में जब हमें पता नहीं लगता कि क्या करें या क्या ना करें. So at that point of time, whom do we approach? We obviously rush to a person whom we trust, whom we think that he will guide us on the correct path. So Krishna-Arjun relationship, or in the modern world we say mentorship, mentor-mentee relationship, it's all the same. So that is also very important to have good management practices and sustainable management practices. and implementing proper ERP models for knowledge sharing, that is Gyan Sahabhajan among the various functions of organization so as to enable managers to take effective decisions, continuous acknowledgement of the role of various employees and managers, that is reward and recognition, creating effective management development programs to accelerate an emergence of possible and responsible leadership at various levels of management, creating an ethical code of conduct or the company credo, which should promote a culture of ethics and transparency, enact stringent policy measures to counter any possible unethical practice at various levels of the organization. The motto of leadership is very well laid down by Steve Jobs of Apple Computers when he said, I quote, "My job is to not be easy on people. My job is to make them better." Some people say, oh God, if Jobs got run over by a bus, Apple would be in trouble. And you, no, I think it won't be a party, but there are really capable people at Apple. My job is to make the whole executive team good enough to be successors. So that's why I try to do, unquote. So we have seen numerous examples of succession planning and mentorship in our Indian context also. In the recent past also, we have seen some great family businesses running by professional managements where leadership was transferred from one generation to the next within the same family. For example, Aditya Birla Group from A.V. Birla to Kumar Mangalam Birla, or Tata Group from Jain Tata to Ratan Tata, etc. In spite of initial hitches, giant companies which started as family businesses have thrived in India, and the mantle of leadership transferred effectively through mentorship. This is something very unusual in the Western countries, where seldom the leadership transfers from one generation to the next happens. The Western countries have something important to learn here, because family businesses show a great resilience in countering the situations of economic downturn. Majority of the giant companies in India were traditionally family businesses when they started. And finally, let us touch upon something about the thinking in terms of shareholder to stakeholder. The business ecosystem and its correlation and transition from focusing at shareholder to stakeholders. So by integrating Indian wisdom with the current management practices, we can really have a more holistic approach to business and leadership. Some of the finest Indian management gurus revered in the Western countries like C.K. Prahlad, Sumantra Ghoshal, Deepak Jain, etc. reflect Indian values through the way they articulate their ideas and thoughts in various management thoughts. So the holistic approach to the management involves a major paradigm shift from focus on shareholders to focus on stakeholders, one that takes into account the needs of shareholders, employees, customers, society, and the environment. Recently, Procter & Gamble has created an open innovation model called Connect Plus Develop, where they have involved stakeholders in their entire research and development framework to come up with new product or process innovations faster than competitors. Today's economy is knowledge economy, and it is the ability to learn faster than the competitors is going to make one a winner. So this is the model which was adopted by Procter and Gamble with regard to research and innovation. So the open innovation paradigm treats R&D as open system. Open innovation suggests that valuable ideas can come from inside or outside the company and can go to market from inside or outside the company as well. This approach places external ideas and external paths to market on the same level of importance as that reserved for internal ideas and paths to market in the earlier era. And the above concept of the innovation and research model has a lot of similarity with the guna theory. In our culture, we talk of three gunas, that is sattva, raj and tam. So sattva relates to knowledge and wisdom, ethical and moral conduct. Rajas is rajas or rajas gun is relates to passion, action and perseverance. And tamasi pravritti as we call it, it relates to inactivity, ignorance and recklessness. So in the context of management, every organization today needs to innovate and at the same time needs to take a triple bottom line approach. A proper balance of the three gunas is extremely important for organizations self, that is Purusha, being able to connect with the broader self, the stakeholders. An organization which does not cultivate a culture of innovation or at least knowledge sharing doesn't have a proper compensation structure and has at least scope for nurturing talent. In that organization, people lack passion and they tend to engage in corrupt and unethical practices that due to lack of sattva and tend to find reasons for inactivity. And such organizations foster the tamas in their cultures and hence are out of business. So therefore, the companies having efficient innovation networks based on open innovation followed by proper compensation structures and who foster an ethical culture through their corporate credo as well as organizational processes tend to balance the sattva, rajas and tama in their organizations. Such organizations really have the potential to become great companies. And finally, I would like to touch upon the congruence of globalization and spirituality. In his opening remarks, Mr. Mukesh Jain had mentioned about spiritual quotient. Madam Pritima Kaushal also referred to it. So I would only say that the role of spirituality cannot be undermined in the process of unification and interconnectedness and formation of uniform world order. With globalization and rapid technology evolution, there is dissemination of information and intermixing of cultures. Every religion has some fundamental tenets which are constant. Ethically, the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, the Holy Quran, the Guru Granth Sahib, or the Bible converge towards creating a uniform world order, promoting world peace and mutual cooperation among people of all races and regions. Today, the world needs to embrace all religions and this spiritual congruence, which could be instrumental in restoring world peace and a uniform economic order. In spite of acculturation, there exist many disruptive forces like corruption, lack of moral leadership, religious fanaticism, taking the form of global terrorism, etc., which is changing this global economy into entropic system stuck in a self-destructive path. So it is only by embracing spiritual congruity that we can suppress the various causes of these disruptive forces and restore world peace and a truly unified and interconnected world order, and hence unleash the infinite energy. It is only through spiritual congruity that we can identify ourselves being a global citizen. And therefore, SQ has assumed more importance compared to IQ and EQ, which we have been talking about for years together. So I would like to conclude by saying that firstly, much of the modern management principles existing today can be derived from the body of knowledge of the ancient Indian scriptures. However, in practice, the sustainability of the existing management frameworks is still dubious. Secondly, through the wisdom of ancient scriptures and taking the sixfold path of jnana or knowledge, we can make the existing modern management paradigms more sustainable in practice. Through spirituality wisdoms of the Vedas, Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, Patanjali Yoga Darshan, Chanakya's Niti or Sutras, etc., etc., we cannot only promote a more ethical and responsible leadership on individual or institutional level, but also move towards the direction of restoring world peace and a better world economic order through coupling globalization with spiritual congruence. So with these words, I thank you all for patient listening, and the floor is now open. If there are any questions from the audience, I will be happy to take them. If I have the immediate answers, I will give. If I don't, I will definitely try to find answers and share it with you later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shastri. It was really very enlightening. Now, I would request the participants, the audience. It's open for all of you. Any question you have, any comment you want to make, anything you want to add. So we have a question by Soumya Singh of IMA, my friend. She is asking, sir, please suggest how organizations can help develop SQ.
Yes, SQ, very good question. Soumya ji is my friend as well. And she has asked a very good question, and it is through combined efforts. But of course, in building SQ of the organization, the most important and most prominent role is that of the leaders, the people at the top. As I said during my talk, it is very simple. उसके लिए गीता पढ़ने की जरूरत नहीं है. आप घर में देख लीजिए, माता पिता का जैसे आचरण होता है वैसे बच्चों का होता है, ऑफिस में बॉस का जैसे कंडक्ट होता है वैसे टीम का होता है. So if we want to really build upon SQ, we need to focus on the top leadership. And if they are lacking in that SQ, there can be certain interventions through which certain steps can be taken to inculcate the spirit of SQ in the top leaders, and which will definitely spread across the organization. छोटे बच्चों को तो ज्यादा सिखाना नहीं पड़ता, हम लोगों की आदतें बदल जाती है, बच्चे तो जल्दी सीख जाते हैं. तो इसलिए it is the responsibility of the leadership to inculcate those things within themselves, which can then be imbibed in the organization as a whole.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shastri. So we have another question by Mr. Sunil Abral, and he's saying that how do you plan to implement sustainable management practices in ISTD? Now, since you are the vice president of our Delhi chapter also, so.
Yes, again, Abral sir is a very learned person, so it is difficult for me to give him a befitting answer, but I'll try. It is through conduct, sir. Everything in this world is a matter of conduct. अगर ISTD को हमें एक अच्छा ऑर्गेनाइजेशन बनाना है, it is we. हम जैसे युग निर्माण योजना, गायत्री परिवार, what do they say? हम बदलेंगे, युग बदलेगा. अरे ISTD को तो तब बदलेंगे जब पहले मैं खुद बदलूंगा. तो पहले मुझे क्लियर होना चाहिए विजन कि मैं ISTD को कहाँ ले जाना चाहता हूँ. मुझे मंजिल ही नहीं पता, मुझे फरीदाबाद जाना है और मैं चांदनी चौक की तरफ कदम बढ़ रहे हैं, तो कैसे होगा? So sir, it is our first we have to improve, and first we have to set our targets, what we want to do. जब तक clear road map नहीं होगा, and that is why management committee is in place. We will have deliberations. That is the exchange of knowledge. Whatever I brought out during my talks, we will try to put them in practice, because preaching is easy, practicing is most difficult. So sir, our approach will be to demonstrate the things through conduct, then rather than making big claims. We will start with small steps. एवरेस्ट पे चढ़ना है तो वो धीरे धीरे एक एक कदम करके ही चढ़ेंगे, लेकिन हाँ हमारी मंजिल एवरेस्ट है।
Okay, thank you. So another question from a very learned man, Dr. Banwait. He's saying IQ, EQ, and SQ, the three gunas of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, and three levels of top, middle, and bottom. Any prescription of the mix required?
Yes, this is very relevant in the context of HRD, or so to say recruitment and placement, and also during the career progression of the people. Here I would like to quote Valmiki Ramayana, in which Ram asks Bharat about these things. Ram says that all cannot be equal, like Sattva, Raja, and Tam, and that can be related in the form of three kinds of employees. There are people who are self-motivated. They not only carry out the task which is assigned to them, but they try to exceed the expectations. Then there are Rajas type of employees who are just doing as directed. So that is the middle category. And Tamas is, there are ones जिनको डंडे के जोर से चलाना पड़ता है और डंडा लगाने से भी नहीं चलते हैं. There are, so these three kinds of employees are there. So the challenge before the leader is to identify as to who is of which kind. If I mistake Mr. X, who is in real sense a Satoguni person with some Tamoguni person, then it's my failure. So I have to identify the categories to which the various employees belong and to deploy them in the job slots for which they are the best fit. So this is the application of concept of Sat, Raj, and Tam in managing the enterprise.
Okay, so thank you very much, Mr. Shastri. Okay, so this is a comment by Dipanshu Sharma. He's saying very well said, along with the situational leadership model. Okay, so I think there are no more questions, or anybody has a question? Yeah, so no more questions, Mr. Shastri. I think everybody has enjoyed the session. So before we end, I would request Mr. our chapter chairperson, Mr. Mukesh Jain, to share with everybody the forthcoming programs of ISTD. Yashwant Johan, we'll come back to you. Right?
Alok ji.
Sure, ma'am.
Alok ji.
Yes, sir.
वो लगाइए दोनों.
Sure.
पहले 12 का और फिर 20 का. Friends, we are having 2 programs in coming weeks. One program is on 12th, digitization in L&D. It will be on 12th November at 4 p.m. Eminent speakers are Simin Askari from DS Group, Deepshikha Malik from Hero Motocorp, Ashima Runa from Cosmo Films, and Gunjan Shukla from BHEL. It will be started at 4 sharp and it will be for 90 minutes. Dr. GP Rao is organizing this and he is a curator also. Next program, please. All of are requested to please attend. Another program is very, very eminent speaker, Padam Bhushan, Dr. M.B. Atriya is very kindly accepted. He is a pioneer of Indian management movement. And a lot of people call him father of Indian management. So he is delivering a lecture on 20th November at 6 p.m. Same time on 20th November, Friday. Powering Indian HRD to face China is the topic. All are requested to please participate in large numbers. Thank you very much. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Jain. Okay, so very quickly, Mr. Chauhan, you wanted to say something? Please go ahead.
Yeah, very good evening, everyone. And Shastri, thank you so much for your key insights on a topic which is very interesting and yet at the same time very knowledgeable also. So my question to you would be that how we can utilize the learnings from the lessons of Indian wisdom to the current situation of COVID-19, because organizations at large are grappling with the challenges. There are business continuity issues which are being faced by the leaders. So what is your advice to all such leaders from the learnings which we just discussed? So, thank you.
Thank you, Yashwant, for asking that. And as you know, GAIL India has truly implemented or rather leveraged all such wisdom from the Indian ethos in practice. For example,
Rachita,
we then some mute कर लीजिए mic को. So Yashwant, what I was telling is that all principles were applied. So as soon as the crisis management, there are two responses to a crisis. Either somebody gets intimidated or gets depressed. But GAIL did not budge. Rather, we adopted the ways and means to align with the new normal. As you would have witnessed, GAIL Training Institute was the first institute in Indian public sector to launch the virtual learning during the lockdown itself. We had offered micro learning modules online to the people who were confined to their homes during the lockdown. So that was the thing. And the conventional classroom mode of teaching at institute was immediately switched over to virtual mode of learning from 29th April itself. This is one example in the area of L&D, in the area of touching the hearts of the people, because we are talking of people to people connect. Western philosophy doesn't pay much attention to that heart to heart connect, whereas Indian philosophy attaches utmost importance to that. So we started an initiative called Sparsha. As a part of that initiative, around 60 of our volunteers made phone calls during the lockdown period to each of the employees, and not only the active employees, but to the retired employees as well, as to find out their well-being and the well-being of their family members. And this initiative we had labeled as Sparsha, logon ke dilon ko chhuna, touching the hearts of the people. So that was application of Indian concepts of management into practice, and which has proven to be very effective. And that has motivated our workforce. Our essential operations never stopped. Gas continued to flow along the pipeline. The LPG was being produced, it was being taken out in the containers, it was reaching the oil marketing companies, and so on and so forth. So the GAIL itself is an example, live example of application of principles of ancient Indian wisdom. And if you want to know more, we can sit together and discuss in detail, because within such a short time it is not possible, but I have given you a glimpse of what can be done in practice to apply these principles.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yashwant. Okay,
Thank
so
you, ma'am.
now it's time to close this session. And now I would request Ma'am Sucharita to give a vote of thanks, a formal vote of thanks.
Thank you, Pritima. Yeah, thank you. A big thank you to Sri D.V. Shastri sir for his deeply insightful and significant talk about creating a new sustainability paradigm through our ancient wisdom. He made a very important point when he said that sustainability and modern management is inbuilt in our ancient wisdom. He gave many examples from the Bhagavad Gita Upanishad, Chanakya's wisdom, and many other texts which tell us that profit is not everything, and it is about cultivating self-knowledge and self-realization. That is the essence of true leadership, and that is the key to living a truly fulfilling and impactful life. Sir's Sanskrit shlokas made the session even more impactful. He made a deeply important point about connecting with our inner voice, and this is the key to building a better society, organizations, and a better society. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, sir. You have beautifully combined ancient and modern wisdom in your talk. Thank you so much. And I would like to express my gratitude to ISTD Delhi chapter for conducting this webinar. I extend my thanks to Ms. Pritima Kaushal Program Coordinator, for organizing this event. We are very grateful to our Chairman, Mr. Mukesh Kumar Jain, and Honorary Secretary, Mr. Ajay Kumar Sahu, sir, for providing their support and encouragement to organize such webinars. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, audience, for participating in this talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you, madam. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you, sir.
Wonderful audience.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
And then I would like to really thank everyone, all the members of ISTD who joined us from different parts of the country, all chairpersons from, different chapters, everybody. Thank you so much. Dr. Jain, Dr. Banwait, Mr. Sunil Abrol, thank you so much for coming. And Dr. Shastri, thank you so much once again.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ji. Thank you very much.
Actually,
Goodbye.